So, we'll wait for, there we go. In case you're not familiar with what I did and you are offended by language, this isn't the event for you, and you might want to step out of the room, as I'm probably going to break some records in terms of the Chicago Humanities Festival and profanity by the end of this day. I just wanted to just start with a couple of thanks. Paula, thank you so much for that nice introduction. Thanks to the Chicago Humanities Festival, especially Mary Kate Barley Jenkins, who was actually able to reschedule my talk because I got a new job in the middle of this whole thing and suddenly was going to be in London last week when the talk was going to happen originally. So I really appreciate their being able to accommodate a changing schedule on my side of things. Thanks to the bookseller who's selling books out front, or outside, I mean, they're not out on state. They're going to be selling books until about 4:50, when apparently I've been told repeatedly security from Chicago Public Library is going to force everyone out. So if you didn't get a chance to pick up a book on your way in, and you do, that would be the time to do it. And thanks finally for the Harold Washington Library for hosting here today, the festival in general, and also just for being generally awesome. I went to college at the School of the Art Institute, and actually the Harold Washington Library opened up pretty much right when I started here, and this really became a refuge for me. I did a lot of my work in study carrels here and up in that beautiful little atrium up on the top, so a big fan of this place. I want to give a little bit of background on what how many people are familiar with the Mayor Emanuel account? Wow, okay, I don't have to give that much background. For those of you that aren't, September 27th of last year, so a little more than a year ago now, if we get back into our Wayback Machines, and remember, that was actually a day that the website Politico went live with a story that Rahm Emanuel, who at the time was the chief of staff for Obama, was going to be leaving the White House to run for mayor of Chicago. Just a few days before that, or a few weeks before that, Mayor Daley said that he was going to finish his reign here, and that we would actually have a mayoral election for the first time. And I guess that's not actually accurate, but it felt that way. And so this Politico story went live, and as Paula said, I have a wife and kid, and both of them had gone to bed early that day. And I was sitting by myself on my couch and had a beer and thought, oh man, I bet you Rahm Emanuel's really pissed that this story went live, right? Because this guy likes to orchestrate things. And so really without much thought beyond that, I thought it would be kind of funny to set up a fake Twitter account about kind of Rahm Emanuel running for mayor. And I adopted the Twitter moniker that Mayor Daley had, which was @MayorDaley. I chose @MayorEmanuel. And just began to write really pretty profane and outrageous things that night, mainly directed towards the news organizations that were beginning to spin out this story that Politico had originally broken. There was not a plan beyond that. But by the end of the night, about 300 people were following that account. And by the end of the next day, close to 1,000 people were. And so I just kept going. And over time, kind of the initial thing that kept me entertained, which was figuring out the most ridiculous ways of combining profanity with non-profanity possible, began to kind of play out. And I began to really begin to get very interested in actually what this form could do, right? Kind of one-liner jokes about the news of the day is one thing, but the account began to tell a story, and it began to tell both the story of the election, but also a story that really kind of broke far beyond what was actually happening in the election. Characters began to form, both real characters, Rahm Emanuel obviously being a central character in this. David Axelrod, who in my story was kind of Rahm Emanuel's best friend and political advisor, and also kind of a survivalist man-child. Along with fictional characters, there was a brilliant intern who went to Lane Tech in my story, named Carl the intern, ended up helping them out of a number of jams. There goes water. And then a little puppy named Hambone that David Axelrod found out on the street one day, and a mustachioed duck that in a time of need presented himself to Rahm Emanuel. He had a little marking on his bill, and so Emanuel named him Quaxelrod. The story unfolded over 6 months. It ended up being about 40,000 words of tweets, most of them pounded out one letter at a time on my phone, oftentimes in my commute to and from downtown. I'm going to read a few sections from the book, and then talk a little bit about kind of what it means to write a story in real time. And then, depending on what time it is, though I have actually no way of knowing, because I turned my phone off, too, as I was instructed. So we may be here all night. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and if there's time, I'll take questions, and I don't know how I'll know that. So anyway, I'm going to read 4 sections of the book, 2 of which I've never actually read live before, so we'll see how that goes. I have little intertitles for them as well. So actually, tomorrow's my birthday, so I thought that I would, thanks. I thought that I'd actually read a section about Rahm Emanuel's birthday. This was November 29th, so actually his birthday's coming up. November 29th of last year. Carl the intern gave me the biggest cup of coffee I've ever seen. It's motherfucking enormous. I'm crying like a baby here. Fuck yes, Axelrod brought over a stuffed bear holding a happy birthday balloon. I named him Peaches. Facts from Plouffe. I got you just what you wanted. An election lawyer that would make Jesus piss his fucking robes. Axelrod keeps telling me there's a secret birthday surprise later, but it's always motherfucking Chuck E. Cheese. Also, Axelrod got spinner rims for his Honda Civic and is trying to pass them off as a present for me. But you'll look awesome. Meeks, Chico, and Burris have each sent fake residency papers with the note, I got you what you really wanted. Really fucking funny. Braun just sent flowers, though, because she's motherfucking classy. I expect that Davis will get the memo that it's my birthday in about 6 weeks and issue a statement in 3 more. Slow motherfucker. Holy fuck. Axelrod's surprise gift is a bar of X-Lax and the key to the motherfucking city council chamber. Between the X-Lax and these 2 boxes of Fiber One, I'm going to be able to craft the fucking Burnham plan of shit. Birthday plans. 1, take a shit in city council chambers. 2, pick up Penny Pritzker and Samurai Mike Singletary. Penny's mom, by the way, gave us this auditorium. So thanks for that. And Samurai Mike Singletary. Number 3, taco pizza at Chuck E. Cheese. Heading over to the city council chambers now, I've got to admit, Axelrod's rims do look motherfucking sweet. This is actually one of my favorite tweets that I wrote. My ass is a brown fountain of motherfucking justice. Best birthday ever. It took a while longer to finish up in the city council than I thought, but I tell you this, that shit was a motherfucking masterpiece. As a result, we're late picking up Penny and Samurai Mike. They've been drinking the whole time they were waiting. Fucking amazing. You haven't lived until you've heard Penny Pritzker do her rendition of the Samurai Mike rap from the Super Bowl Shuffle. Now Mike Singletary is up on stage with that motherfucking Chuck E. Cheese robot mouse. I think Axelrod may choke. He's laughing so hard. And this trip to Chuck E. Cheese just confirms it. I am the motherfucking king of whack-a-mole. Driving Lakeshore Drive in Axelrod's Civic, rain coming in the missing window, Penny, Samurai Mike, and I just fucking freestyling. Stumbling into bed, wet, hoarse, and happy. 51 is going to be all fucking right. So one of the kind of major events, both in our Chicago and in this Chicago, was the massive blizzard of January 31st and February 1st of last year. And one of the things that's actually quite interesting about writing a story that is kind of reflecting and being influenced by events as they play out in real time is you've got to constantly be kind of pivoting as you're kind of figuring out what's going on, right? By storyline, he lived in our universe, and so something like this massive snowstorm was going to majorly affect that. So I'm actually going to read two little sections. I'm going to flop in the middle and jump 2 days around the snowstorm stuff. Just as a note, in my story, Rahm Emanuel is living in the crawl space underneath his house because, of course, it had been rented out, and he had been living in an apartment that he destroyed when he got kicked off the ballot. So, got back, it's a long story. Got back to the crawl space, and Axelrod's stockpiling canned goods. He just keeps muttering, "Storm coming." Fuck this shit. Axelrod handed me a shopping list and said, "We don't have much time." What the fuck do we need oxygen tanks for? Also on Axelrod's storm survival list, 100 copies of today's Chicago fucking Tribune and 100 newspaper-sized picture frames. And I asked Axelrod about the fucking newspapers. "It's for preservation for future generations in case we don't survive the storm," he says. "The fact that I'm on the cover is just pure fucking coincidence," Axelrod says, but he's fucking smiling. Axelrod has Carl the intern smoking meats down here. The whole crawl space smells fucking incredible. Axelrod's list calls for 20 shovels, but I've hit 6 stores and only have 18. Fuck. Axelrod's response: "You want to be the asshole out there shoveling with his hands? When we break the 18th shovel, just stop looking." Snow preparation's finally done. Axelrod just passed out our motherfucking sleeping shifts. Everyone gets 2 hours on watch. Everyone. The snowsuits Axelrod made for Hambone and Quaxelrod are adorable. Tiny fucking snowshoes. Tiny fucking hats. Finished my first 2-hour snow shift. So far, it's just really fucking cold. Hambone's up next. The next day, sweet fucking coffee. Axelrod had us buy 20 pounds of beans to weather the storm. I fucking doubled that. Axelrod's built a cubicle out of oversized pork and beans cans. He calls it the weather center. It's been beeping all fucking night. Report from Axelrod's weather center has the big storm hitting later this afternoon. Perfectly fucking reasonable to get drunk now. By the way, the timestamp on that is 7:40 a.m. Irish motherfucking coffee for the fucking win. Then we jump to noon. Public service announcement. In about 3 hours, you're going to need a lot of fucking whiskey. 3:25 p.m., Axelrod's outside screaming, "It's fucking here! It's fucking here!" And Axelrod's got a line of Teamster trucks parked outside, and he's attaching plows to them. Motherfucking shovel fucking ready. That's right, Chico, Braun, and Devalier. What do you got? Don't bring a motherfucking shovel to a plow fight. Oh, fuck, I already ate all the motherfucking Oreos. Thinking about sending Carl the intern out to pick up more. Axelrod just came in for a quick check-in at the weather center. His eyes are shining like motherfucking beacons. This is my time. Sending Carl the intern out on a sled with Quaxelrod and Hambone mushing. Hope he's back with the fucking Oreos soon. Looking out the periscope that Axelrod hooked up. I'm pretty fucking sure snow isn't supposed to fall up. What the fucking fuck? Plan. When this shit is over, massive fucking snowball fight on Ravenswood, east side of the tracks versus west side. A giant fucking snowball rolled against the crawl space door. It busted open and out fell Carl the intern, Hambone, Quaxelrod, and my Oreos. Axelrod just called in from a Teamster truck. "We're going to surf a plow on the lake. You in?" Fuck yes, I'm in. The plan, we're going to hit velocity on the Michigan Avenue curve, launch into the water, and ride a motherfucking 18-foot wave to victory. Holy fuck, unless you've got a fleet of Teamsters to drive you around, stay the fuck inside. It's insane out here. Me, I've got a fleet of Teamsters, and we're barreling down Milwaukee. Aces fucking high, you motherfucking storm. Up on the roof of the cab, heading north down Lakeshore fast, curves coming up, time to hang the fuck on. And we're off the curve, and in the goddamn air, flying. The wind and water are like wild animals fucking. We caught the wave. It's a fucking 20 fucking footer, all fucking gray and ice and snarl and balanced on the roof of this fucking plow cab, riding a fucking ice wave in the middle of the worst fucking blizzard in a generation. I'm the fucking king of the motherfucking world. So they end up actually getting trapped in the crawl space for a while because the snow had piled up past their exit route. And Carl, the intern, ends up getting them out and builds a really elaborate igloo for them. This is 2 days later, which, if you remember, it got incredibly cold right after that storm, like single digits, negative digits. Most things closed. No one went anywhere because nobody could get down the street, right? All right, so fuck it. We've all left the igloo, just playing with Hambone in the snow. Plouffe still on speaker. Oh, he had a meeting with Plouffe on speakerphone. Spill on speaker being unintelligible. We're all in our fucking Arctic grade snowsuits, just wandering. Axelrod's eyes are lit up. It's like we're the last people on Earth. It really does feel like the end of the fucking world. We're walking down the middle of the motherfucking Dan Ryan right now. Quaxelrod fucking owns the motherfucking express lanes, waddling like a badass motherfucker. The loop is fucking abandoned. We're swinging from the L tracks like they're motherfucking monkey bars. And now we're walking out on the lake. It's just one giant sheet of gray fucking ice, and it's just the 5 of us. There are a lot of things I can say I've done with my life, but now I can say I made a motherfucking snow angel on Lake Michigan. Finally ran into another person, and it's someone driving a motherfucking cupcake truck. Fucking cupcakes. Made it back to the igloo, ran into a total of 4 people. Cupcake driver, a guy on a donut run, and 2 canvassers for motherfucking Chico. Carl, the intern, did an incredible job on this igloo. It's got a couple of little snow desks, a fridge, some fucking ice couches. He built a little fireplace so we're warm in here, and we can actually stand up. Major fucking benefit over the crawl space. Carl even built a 2nd floor, a lofted atrium, where Hambone and Quaxelrod can hang out. This place is fucking awesome. Sitting in the igloo, passing a bottle around, Axelrod busted out his guitar and is singing Bon fucking Jovi. On a steel horse I ride, a belly warm with whiskey, a duck and a dog sleeping soundly, and your best friend playing Jovi. Motherfucking awesome. So later on, a week before the election, as Paula made mention, though in kind of a roundabout way, something really strange happened. Well, actually, something strange had happened before that, which was the Emanuel campaign didn't shut this thing down, right? Which was, I still don't understand why that didn't happen on day one. But then it took on a life of its own, right? It entered into major national political reporting by January. And there was really, at that point, there was no way they could kind of shut it down. And at some point, they had this must have had a bizarre meeting, right? Where they did some kind of political calculus and decided, why not, right? So he was actually, the real Emanuel and my Emanuel were both on this ridiculous 50 wards in 50 hours tour. And he called in, not mine, his, called in to the Rowan Roper show. Does anyone listen to that show? Yeah, it's not very good. And they do this interview about the 50 wards and 50 hours thing, and then they ask a question at the end about my account, right? And they say, hey, this account has so many more followers than you, which is true. I had about 5 times as many followers as Rahm Emanuel. What do you think about it? And then he just jumps in and goes, this is what I'm going to do. When the election's over, I'm going to donate, first he says $2,500, to the charity of the author of the account's choice. And then later on in the same, 2 sentences later, he says $2,500 or $4,000, 5,000, which then becomes canonical, right? Because immediately, news picked up on this. Rahm Emanuel offers money. The problem for me was he was very clear. It was a charitable donation to a thing. Within moments of this announcement coming out, The web was filled with articles like one from MSNBC that said, Rahm Emanuel puts bounty on vulgar Twitter followers' head, or Twitterer's head. And there were, chat rooms and message boards like one I saw on Fox News where it was literally people were like, let's round up a posse and find this guy. Take Rahm Emanuel's money, And I don't listen to that radio show, so I wouldn't have known it happened, except that the @replies to the Mayor Emanuel account just exploded. Most of them saying, it's a trap, right? And I really didn't know how to process it, so I did what I do, which was just do it on Twitter, and ended up writing that night kind of an elaborate hide and seek. They had to move back into the crawl space because all the snow melted. So he and Axelrod and Carl, the intern, play hide and seek that night. And he's just determined, right? He's like, fuck it, hide and seek, motherfuckers. I'll get out of this goddamn box of baby clothes when I'm motherfucking ready. He found a box of his kids' old baby clothes. Fell asleep inside this box. This is the next morning. Have the worst fucking crick in my back and I can't really move. Axelrod, Carl, Hambone, Quaxelrod, anyone? There was a shift in the night and there's something on top of this box now and I can't get it open. Fucking trapped with no coffee. Everyone else must be on day 2 of my wards tour, which maybe is a blessing because today is all the shitty wards. Looking at you, 14th. But really, there are only so many times a guy can read Pat the Bunny, and this pile of cloth diapers is getting fucking short. That one takes a while, right? You guys are like, oh, yeah. I'm so motherfucking hungry that I might eat this motherfucking jar of fermented baby food I found. Ate it, and holy fucking fuck. I swear to God, the bunny on the cover of that book just winked at me. Okay, nobody panic, but this box is definitely getting fucking bigger. And I remember packing this box, but I don't remember fitting an entire field of fucking wheat in here, and that's what I'm standing in. Someone just ran by me in this wheat field. He was running fucking fast. All I saw was the number 34. Sweetness? Definitely sweetness. He ran by again, and this time with the Pat the Bunny on his back. And the fucking bunny turned and said, follow me. I have the distinct fucking feeling that this is going to be a long motherfucking day. And so this story arc takes the entire day. It starts at about 7 in the morning and goes until about 8 at night. And it's punctuated by these big breaks, and those big breaks are actually things in my day that I had to do, right? So like this one, I had to teach a class. So it doesn't pick up again until noon. We've been running through this wheat field for fucking hours now. It's so hot, I ripped a sleeve off my shirt to wipe away the sweat. We've reached a clearing, and Sweetness turns and says, we're here. It's a huge motherfucking tower made out of dibs chairs. Everyone knows what dibs chairs are? Who doesn't know? Who's not from this town? Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, dibs chairs are one terminology for all the shit that people put in their parking spaces after they shovel them out. Yeah, so it's a giant pile of that. That fucking bunny hops off Peyton's back and scampers up the tower, and Sweetness turns and says, we've run together as far as we can. I turn and say, I don't know what to do, but Sweetness is already gone, the dulcet tones of the Super Bowl shuffle, all that's fucking left. Well, it's either walk back through that field of wheat or climb up this tower of dibs furniture. Motherfuck it, let's head up. And there's another 2-hour break. I had a meeting. I'm probably a mile up this motherfucking tower of milk crates and lawn chairs, and all I can see in every direction is wheat ringed by water. I've reached a landing through the tower, though the tower rises fucking above. A door opens and the disembodied head of Marshall Field floats out. You know what? Field may be a motherfucking disembodied head, but he still looks fucking classy. Dapper tie dangling down. Field's fucking luminescent mouth opens and he speaks. If you want to run this city, there's some things you need to know. This city burned once. The screams still haunt me, but my friends and I built it back. His head is floating fucking circles around me. The river, it used to bubble with poison. It killed scores. My friends and I, we reversed it. I'm getting fucking dizzy. At the end of all that horror, we built a city of dreams, my friends and I. They said we couldn't. We did. I'm going to be fucking sick. It's a city that doesn't quit. It's a city that never stops believing. And he's humming some fucking tune I can't place. And I can feel myself passing out when Marshall Field floats right up to me, looks me in the fucking eyes and says, he's looking for you. What the motherfucking fuck? And that one trails out. And then 3 hours later, he goes, finishes the swear over a 3-hour fall. I blacked out there. My motherfucking head is pounding. There's that fucking bunny again, climbing ever upward. Here we go. We're up above the clouds now, looking down on just a sea of pink fluff. Actually, it looks motherfucking delicious. It's motherfucking beautiful up here, the sun making this tower of junk glow with the righteous power of millions of saved parking spaces. I've climbed up to another landing. Up here, the motherfucking heart of Studs Terkel is shining like a fucking beacon. A figure walks in front of the heart. It brings light, its bright light still filtering through his translucent form. Thumbs up, my friend. Siskel. Gene Siskel's smile competes with the light of Stud's heart. His thumbs are fucking enormous. He's floating just slightly above the ground, but Siskel speaks with fucking gravity. Stud's heart beats for all Chicagoans. Their shoulders are broad, but their hearts are fragile. You have to feel the pulse of the city, and he waves me towards the fucking heart. I'm hugging the glowing fucking heart of Stud's Terkel, and it's wet, and it's bright, and I can feel all of you beat inside it. And now Siskel's trying to pull me away with his giant fucking thumbs. But I want to stay holding this glowing heart forever. We don't have much time. Siskel's yanking me backwards now. My chest feels fucking hollow as he does it. Look, there's something you need to know about you, about this. But my eyes are fucking blurred, and I can feel myself falling. It's 2.5 hours later. Landed. And I'm in a white room, and there's music playing softly, and there's no wheat, and no dibs tower. There's no fucking anything. And out of the wall, just right there out of it, like it doesn't exist at all, walks Curtis Mayfield. He's wearing a beautiful fucking suit. And he's singing really quietly, but it's beautiful. A slow version of It's All Right, and I close my eyes and I know that it is. And he's putting his hand on my arm, the one that has the sleeve missing, and for the first time in fucking months, I just feel calm. And the Pat the Bunny comes over and hops into my arms, and he's so motherfucking soft, I could pat him forever. And Curtis is just humming now, and the bunny is so fucking soft. And you know what? If this is it, this is pretty fucking good. But then Curtis says in that beautiful fucking voice of his, this isn't the kind of story where it turns out you're dead. You've got a lot of life still ahead of you, especially if you don't eat old shit you find in a box. And there are a lot more stories still to tell, just don't tell them with cheap ass they were all dead endings. But my brother, it's not life or stories that I want to talk about. It's my city. It's Chicago. I'm starting to feel fucking woozy again. Chicago is hurting. I can feel it. And he opens his suit. And inside is no body but the motherfucking skyline itself. And Curtis Mayfield points to the fucking skyline inside his chest and he says, it needs someone. Someone to hold it. Someone to love it. And suddenly Curtis is singing again, just slow and low. And I can feel the dance come back to me. And then we're dancing together. And then Curtis leans in really fucking close. And in a whisper, he says, there's something else you need to know, man. And he stops dancing and looks right at me and says so quietly, it's almost fucking inaudible, he's looking for you. And I can't even ask who before he says, you have to go, man. You have to go right now. And I can feel myself being pulled away. And I'm flying fucking backwards. But I can hear Curtis yell out, nothing is what it seems, man. What if you're not you? Axelrod and Carl, the intern, are pulling me out of the box. We heard you screaming from the 19th ward. I fucking love my friends. Thank you. So that section really begins to set up what becomes the end of the book. And I'm not going to read the actual full end of the book, but I am going to read the official setup, which is the day before the election. And so just as a quick moment of setup, for those of you who don't know, Rahm Emanuel has a brother named Ari, who's apparently an asshole agent in Hollywood, and who the real one was actually coming in for Election Day. This is the day before the election, the night of at this point. And he and David Axelrod have gone to O'Hare to pick up Ari from the airport. The snow's delayed Ari's plane for a couple of hours. Probably best if it were delayed until motherfucking Wednesday. Also, Rahm Emanuel and Ari Emanuel don't get along at all. Wrapped in a blanket while riding shotgun in the Civic, because the window's missing, on the way to get Ari from the airport. The wind is cold through the missing window. Nice blanket line. It's fix the fucking airport once you're mayor, okay, asshole? Motherfucking Ari, my brother's here. How come every news clip I see of you, you're acting like a giant walking hernia? He's here for 2 fucking days. I had no clue that the prerequisite for running for mayor was chopping your balls off. We're stuck in fucking stop-and-go traffic. Hey, how come their fucking radio doesn't work? What kind of piece of shit car is this? And I can see Axelrod turning red. Fucking Spielberg alone gave you enough to buy a fucking Beamer. That's a true fact, actually. Steven Spielberg, movie maker of Tintin that's coming out soon, gave Rahm Emanuel $75,000 to run for mayor of Chicago. All right. Fucking Spielberg alone gave you enough to buy a fucking Beamer, and you're driving around in this shit? Uh-oh, Axelrod's pulling off. And now we're standing outside, and Axelrod's yelling, "Let's go, asshole," at Ari. He really fucking loves his car. They're down in the snow, pummeling each other, and I don't even notice the figure behind me before the bag's already over my head. Fuck. 2 hours later, I'm fucking gasping when the bag comes off. We've been driving around for an hour, clearly trying to confuse me. It worked. I'm still blinking, and the light is grinding a migraine into being when I hear a voice fucking boom out from above me. Sorry for the drama, but it's not like I could just invite you over here for tea. My fucking eyes start to come into focus. I pull my head up from the marble floor, and there, standing above me, is the massive fucking frame of Mayor Daley. Daley helps me up. His hands fucking envelop my arms completely. Sorry again, but we need to talk tonight. Can't take chances. Look, there's some things you need to know. I'm here in his office in City fucking Hall. So the toilet just down the hall. You need to jiggle the handle after you flush. Daley's not really making eye contact. And Magdalena, she cleans up on alternating nights. If you have shit you don't want thrown out, make sure you put it away. And I made a little calendar of all the secretaries' birthdays. Don't forget. If I didn't know better, I'd think Daley was welling up. And suddenly Daley's tears are gone, and they're replaced by anger. Don't fuck this up. There's so much more than you know. And Daley's gesturing me to follow him, and suddenly we're out a window and heading up a motherfucking fire escape. We're on the roof of City Hall. The wind is fucking strong, and the snow stings when it hits my face. Daley heads into a glass dome. It's so warm and beautiful in the dome, green everywhere. And the air is pungent with the smell of, is that fucking celery? Daley fucking plucks a stalk. Care for these. Let flowers bloom. Dry them. Harvest the seeds. Grind them. Mix with salt. He hands me a small pinch of powder, and the sharp taste of celery salt crosses my lips. Our legacy, he says, and points to the stalks. And it's then that I notice for the first fucking time, nestled amid the stalks of celery, are 3 modest headstones. Daley points to the headstones. They're here with us always. Harrison, Washington, Dad. He chokes up on the last one. I search the ground for 3 small pebbles. Daley's fucking silent while I place one on each of the gravestones. It blooms year-round thanks to them, he says quietly. And we're just looking, standing, breathing the thick, moist air together. There's something else. Daley breaks the silence, his voice cracking just a fucking little. He flips a switch on the wall. There's a whirring sound, and then up from the center of the dome rises an oversized charcoal grill. What the fuck? The mayor doesn't just run Chicago, Daley says, walking over to the grill. You need to understand what's really at stake here. Daley lifts the lid of the grill, his body straining under the weight, and suddenly, I don't want to fucking know what's inside. There's not just one Chicago. There's not just one you. It's infinite, and we keep the portal. And he gestures for me to look in. And I look, and it's Chicago, again and again. And tiny, in the corner, peering up at me, is me. Thousands, millions. Except something feels fucking wrong. You notice it too, says Daley. There's one of you missing. And Daley looks at me, deadly fucking serious, and says, which means there are two of you here in this world, in this time. Which means, and he looks at me now, and there are fucking tears on his face, that one of you won't survive this election. And before I can try to figure out what the fuck Daley's going on about, the bag is back over my head and everything goes black. Thanks. Does anyone know what time it is? Awesome. When does this end? 4:30. Okay, great. Perfect. So those are four passages from the book. What I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about is actually talk a little bit about kind of what this all means. Not what an infinite Chicago and all of that means, but what it means when each passing news event, right? Whether it's something that ultimately was inconsequential, like the way Mayor Emanuel spread from one person to another, to news organizations, to ultimately when the news finally hit, The Atlantic revealed my identity a week after the election, and about 2 hours after that, there were local news people on my front lawn. Want to talk about how Twitter and how this kind of real-time stream has really kind of changed the way we think about time, the way we think about information dissemination within that time. So something like Mayor Emanuel, ultimately very inconsequential. Things of huge consequence, right? The Arab Spring, the Occupy movement that's been spreading around, the assassination of Osama bin Laden. Each time we see something new happen, becomes more and more clear that this real-time dissemination and distribution of information at web scale is something truly remarkable. And like the doctor says, something pretty complicated. This is a graph of the tweets per second over a 2-hour period when the news of Osama bin Laden's death spread over Twitter. At the peak of that graph, which you'll see is actually about 45 minutes before Barack Obama actually makes his remarks, tweets are unfolding at about 5,000 tweets a second. Right? At the time, that was one of the fastest kind of sustained periods of time that Twitter was actually dealing with a load. That was back in May. Right? And now, with the death of Steve Jobs, Twitter broke a new record, which was 10,000 tweets a second. To put that into context, a hummingbird's wings beat at about 20 to 25 times a second, which means that the news of Osama bin Laden's death was traveling through the internet 250 times faster than the speed that a hummingbird's wings move. And the news of Steve Jobs' death moved at about 500 times faster than a hummingbird's wings. And of course, nobody's seeing all 10,000 of those tweets a second, right? What we're seeing is a tiny subset of those. And most interesting to me, whether we're seeing those Steve Jobs tweets or the Mayor Emanuel tweets or anything, we're seeing those things interspersed and interleaved between everything else that any of us are following on Twitter, right? Our friends, our family, the death of Steve Jobs, somebody making a joke, a celebrity, right? I mean, it's a very interesting way of figuring this stuff out, and it means that a story, whether it's fact or fiction, unfolds in a very different way on Twitter. It's locked into time. It's unfolding at the same pace as the world around you. And this is distinctly different than the way time works in a traditional story, right? When you read a story, when you watch a movie, when you see something on TV, You're entering the timeline of that story. But in a real-time story, that timeline is dictated by time itself. Right? And so to write a real-time story, you have to take that into account. The story on Twitter doesn't make sense as something written in advance and doled out sentence by sentence by sentence. As I said earlier, the blizzard had to be entirely improvised as it went along. In fact, all of this story was entirely improvised as it went along. The space in between tweets is time that actually passes for the reader of those tweets. And so your characters need to experience that as such. In that way, it's actually really similar to the way panels work in a comic book. And actually, Scott McCloud, in an incredible book called Understanding Comics, puts it this way. He says, comics panels fracture both time and space, offering a jagged staccato rhythm of unconnected moments. But closure, meaning we read it, allows us to connect those moments and mentally construct a continuous, unified reality. And that continuous reality of a fiction in a Twitter-based story intertwines itself with the reader's reality as well. So that each tweet from an account like Mayor Emanuel falls in between the rest of your Twitter stream. And as a result, a story is experienced differently by everyone that experiences it. Right? So imagine a short arc that's 3 tweets over a 30-minute period. Right? You've got 10 minutes approximately spaced between each tweet. In the story you're writing, 10 minutes is elapsing for your characters. So they're not saying one sentence and then finishing that sentence here. They need to have moved on in advance because the readers, 10 minutes have passed. But the other thing is you have to think about the fact that one person following this account may not be following very many people on Twitter. So those 10-minute blanks may only have 2 or 3 tweets in between them of other people's stuff. Right? Someone else may be a very hardcore user of Twitter, and so in those 10-minute periods, they've gotten 200 tweets, right, from hundreds, if not thousands of people that they're following, so that the story actually unfolds in a very different experience for the person that's seeing it barely interrupted and the person that's seeing it's massively interrupted. And as a result of that, we end up with a highly personal and highly personalized story that takes place in and around reality itself. And this is something that's very new. It's something that Mayor Emanuel has now been credited by places like Wired as figuring out really a new way of telling a story in a very new medium. But I really think of this as a very profane first draft. Of a very new form, and that as with many things right now, as we see happening in journalism, as we see happening in politics, as we see happening throughout culture, storytelling is going to be entering a brave new world of experimentation, expansion, and expression. And I, for one, can't wait. Thanks so much. What time is it? Is there time for questions, or are we done? Perfect.
We have 2 microphones right after.
Look at that.
If you want to use them, then we can capture it on our recording. We are recording today. Otherwise, you can raise your hand, and if you might be able to...
I can restate the question, yeah.
Exactly. About 10 minutes.
Yes, sir.
Great question. So does compiling all these Twitter feeds into a book at the end then run contrary to the entire purpose of the medium?
Well, that's an interesting question. And the real trick was so actually that last example is a great example of you've got this interrupted story, right? It's actually very hard to follow the narrative as it unfolds in real time, and yet the narrative became very central to the whole thing, and so actually putting it together in more of an archival format really helps the narrative to really kind of shine through, and you realize that there's actually a very linear story in some capacities that really begins to unfold back in October before it actually, fully plays out. But there was a real trick to it, right? Because so much of the story unfolds in a reactive way, right? Reacting to things that are happening in the real world. And so if you're following it in Twitter, you're probably getting the context for that reaction in and around the story as it unfolds, right? That isn't the case as it moves into something like this, where you're sitting down and what you don't want is somebody to be like, what does that mean? And then go off and hit at Google, and next thing they know, 7 hours have gone by, and they go back to the book. So actually, the feed one was edited a little bit and brought down to focus much more on the narrative. Probably 98% of the feed is in the book. But the other thing is it's extensively annotated. So all of the things that he's reacting to are actually folded in within the context of the story itself. So it was a challenge in terms of doing it, but I actually think it worked pretty well, especially in service to the narrative. Yeah. You, there, with sunglasses, yes.
Do you know, I know you met Rahm Emanuel after the fact.
Yeah.
In various settings, I think I read it online, but did he like it? And then B, did he read it as it was going throughout the campaign, and what was that like?
So the question is, what did Rahm Emanuel actually think of it? I don't know if there's any way of knowing, right? So I did, in fact, meet Rahm Emanuel in the context of an incredibly orchestrated press event where it was on that Rowan Roper show 2 days after the Atlantic story ran, because he had $5,000 to give to a charity of my choice, which I chose Young Chicago Authors, which is an amazing writing organization here in the city. I actually just joined their board, which is awesome. But Causes.com had gotten into the mix as well and offered to match that. So suddenly we're talking about $10,000. And the two radio hosts both offered to kick $1,000 in each as well. So I couldn't really say I am not going to do this, but I didn't really want to do it, right? Because it was a circus, right? I mean, it was, a radio booth of about, 15 by 10, and of opposite me and Rahm, who was there, was a bank of cameras, right? So you walk in, it's like, splashes going off, and it was just craziness. So we didn't really get a chance to sit down and chat. The only other time that we've crossed paths is he crashed the book release party, kind of did a lap through the room and signed my book, signed it actually. Oh God, that almost landed on my computer. Where is it? He signed it. You are an asshole. Mayor Emanuel. So maybe that's how he feels. I don't know. I really don't know. And I'm kind of glad I don't know. Yeah, in the orange stripe.
This might be too personal, but who'd you vote for?
I live in Evanston. I voted for Mayor Tisdall. Yeah. And she won. Yeah. So. Yes, black shirt back there.
First of all, thank you for that $5,000 to YCA. It was much appreciated.
Yeah.
And, when you came out from doing this as successive tweets and then turned it into a book, what type of reaction did you get? And was it kind of perceived first as like a joke by more literary diehards, and then did that reaction start changing, or how did that happen?
No. So the question was, what was the reaction to this being a book, and did people kind of think it was a joke or something like that? Much to my complete shock, right? There's been a lot. So part of it has helped. The Atlantic story was amazing, right? So before, this was all written anonymously. There was an incredible amount of attention on trying to figure out who it was. I really didn't want to be outed. Right? Because if I get outed, the entire story just becomes, we figured out who this guy is, right? Which isn't a very interesting story. So near the very end, there was actually a writer named Alexis Madrigal, who writes for The Atlantic, who contacted the account and who I began to think might be an interesting person to engage in a conversation, right? So I had an anonymous email account that I communicated with him from. And I basically spent 24 hours fucking with him. Right, just to see what he would do. And he was actually awesome. Like at one point I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do it with you because the New York Times says they'll give me a pony, right? And he wrote back and he said, great, now I have to kill everyone at the New York Times and every pony, right? Which is a pretty good response. And so we ended up agreeing to do a story. And he actually wrote a pretty incredible story that really went to great lengths to contextualize it within the context of literature, right? And I think that that helped to set a tone when the book came out, because many of the reviews, the Chicago Tribune's is fucking bonkers, right? I mean, like, in terms of, like, it's bananas, like, how I don't even know what happened there, but thanks, guys. The Economist wrote a really big piece about it being kind of this, literature. Wired, like I put up there, like, it actually very much kind of has stayed within the Parthenon of being a literary work, which is a little crazy. Yeah.
Can you talk about what you're doing now?
Yes, what I'm doing now. So I had been teaching at Columbia College in the journalism department there, mainly doing digital stuff. And over the course of the summer, I got approached by Mozilla, the folks that make the Firefox web browser. And you may not know, but they're actually a nonprofit organization. And their foundation arm does a lot of advocacy work around keeping the web free and open in various spaces of interest. And so they had gotten a very large grant, $2.5 million grant from the Knight Foundation, to build up an ecosystem around the use of open source software in newsrooms. And I'm now heading up that project for them. So I'm 3 months in, and it was 3 months of like jumping on a train that's hurtling forward at an incredible amount of pace and trying to make that turn. But this thing in London was actually kind of the end of everything that was in progress when I had started, and now we get to kind of unfold it from there. No, they're actually, Mozilla's in Mountain View, California. Much of the foundation is in Toronto, and many of the workers of Mozilla are everywhere. So they actually allow you to work virtually. So I work out of my home when I'm not in an airplane. Yeah.
Was there ever a point where, as this was getting larger, that you got scared? I mean, that
Yes.
you're attacking somebody who's very powerful, and you could have taken this a different direction and said,
No, yeah. So the question was, did I ever get scared? Yes, a lot, and far too late, right? Way too late to really do anything about it. Because really, by the end of like day 2, there's enough evidence there to fucking end me, right? And so, yeah, I mean, that was a very real concern, right? I mean, very honestly, especially in the early parts of the account, I didn't want to get found out because I was pretty convinced I'd lose my job, right? Which may or may not have been true, but that was definitely the worry. Later on, the worry was much more about being found out and not having finished the story, right? Did anyone follow the fake Steve Jobs blog when it was being written by Dan Lyons? This is like total nerdery far beyond the normal entry-level nerdery. It was this guy, Dan Lyons, who's actually a tech reporter. He was at the time, I believe, a reporter for Forbes, and now he writes for Newsweek, I think. He created this actually really amazing blog, which really, if you look at, there are a lot of parallels, and I actually have a couple of little language nods towards fake Steve Jobs in this. But he wrote this amazing kind of elseworld story about Steve Jobs. This is long before he got sick. In fact, he stopped doing it when he got sick. But he got outed, right? So I forget who broke the story that it was him. And it just kind of petered out. He kept trying to write it even after he had been outed, and it just kind of stopped being fun because you couldn't really enter into this fiction in the same way. And having seen that, I really didn't want to not be able to finish up the story, which I knew was ending at the end of the election. So that was really a lot of the fear at that point, was much more about like, shit, I'm not going to make it, But definitely, like, even when it came out, it was like, what is about to happen, And I mean, by and large, it's amazing. Now, granted, my wife and I did receive jury summons on the same day for the same place at the same time, which seems a little odd. But other than that, everything's been fine. Yes? You?
I have 2 short questions.
Okay.
One, I don't know anything about Twitter. It's
Good,
a certain
good.
number of characters.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
Does your brain work after a while with those number of characters?
Yeah.
And 2, did you have a kind of overarching idea for each segment, even though you did it in real time?
Right. Okay. So the questions are, one, what are the character limits of Twitter and what does that do to your brain? And two, were there kind of overarching story ideas? So the Twitter thing, yeah. So Twitter has a limit of 140 characters in its tweets, and that's not actually an arbitrary length. The reason why it's that is the length of a text message is 160 characters, and the original intention and design of Twitter was that it would all be done over text messaging, and they needed 20 characters to be able to identify the writer, so that 140 characters is that length. And you know what it did? It made me a fucking way better writer, right? Because you have to think of everything in this incredibly economical way. You really end up adopting the language of poetry way more than the language of prose, right? Because you just have to be so incredibly efficient at what you do. Actually, one of my favorite tweets in that way, and one of the ones that took the longest amount of drafting, was that recipe for celery salt, right? Because I really wanted it to all fit into one single tweet, right? That took a lot of just efficiency and compression. So I actually think it's an incredibly good writing tool, right? And I think that people that kind of adopt the language of preteen text messengers with, the letter U and the number 2 and all of that stuff are actually doing themselves a major disservice, because I think it actually is a pretty good writing tool. In terms of kind of pre-thinking out the arc, once I knew I was doing a thing, right? Because I didn't know I was doing a thing for a while. I knew it was the story of the election, right? One of the truly bizarre external things that happened was the day after the election, the Chicago Tribune ran 2 editorials, right? One was about their hopes for the Emanuel administration, and the other one was about this account, right? And telling it to not stop, right? To continue to, kind of parody the Emanuel administration as it went. That just was always terribly boring to me as a concept, right? Because it's just like, that's just unending, right? And good stories end, and they always end. And so I always knew it was the story of the election, right? I knew that arc was there. I didn't really know how that ended, but I knew it was there. And then I would get little moments in my head, right? Like I actually knew kind of early on that I wanted near the end there to be a meeting between Emanuel and Daley. Right? The idea at the time was that Daley was going to basically sit down with him and be like, this is the fucking worst job ever, right? And it was all going to be like, my dad told me this, and now I'm telling you this. And actually, I ended up giving that speech to Daley the week that Emanuel was kicked off the ballot, right? My Emanuel goes nuts. He destroys his apartment. His friends go to drive the Honda Civic into City Hall. He ends up sleeping under a bridge, the Cortlandt Street Bridge, which is actually my favorite place in all of Chicago. He sleeps under the bridge, wakes up the next morning, he's really despondent. He meets this duck. He's got the puppy with him. Like, he's clearly not in good place. And he rides an ice floe down the river. And then out of the fog comes Mayor Daley riding an ice floe the other way. And he basically, God, can I find this in the time that we have? Because it's actually awesome. Let's see here. Daley. There's an index in the book, so that helps. Daley, Richard J. Richard M. All right, that should work. 124. I'm about to be yanked, aren't I?
Oh, well, I was going to say, if you want to do a book sale, we have to go.
Okay, I'm going to read this, and then we're going to go. So, Quackswell just started quacking like crazy. It's foggy, but I can see someone else fucking floating towards us. It's Daley floating the other way. You're a hard man to find, you know. Here's some bread for your duck. Shut him the fuck up. First off, you're back on, because he was back on. I need to get that news to him somehow. You're back on. I mean, for now, probably forever. The Supremes are ass fucks, but they're my ass fucks. Daley's hands are huge. But really, man, pull yourself the fuck together. You're running for mayor of Chicago. People are going to fuck with you all the time. You think that when I wanted to close Miggs Field, they told me no, I went adrift? No, I fucking closed Miggs fucking Field. You think when they started pissing on the parking meter sale that I fucking turned tail? No, I sold off every fucking thing else too. Here's something my dad told me once. The role of the mayor is to be the guy that everyone takes a shit on, and then to shit on them back. Except he didn't say everyone. He said blacks, Jews, Poles, and hippies, but those were different times. Fucking substance is the same. So you're going to turn this ice floe around, pack up your pets, and run for fucking goddamn mayor of Chicago, and you're going to win, right? So that little moment, my dad told me this, I had thought of that, but that was going to happen at the end, and then it was like, this is a perfect moment for it, and so then I needed something else for that end meeting, which then became the insane Dual Chicago. That's it in terms of time. There are books for sale outside. Thank you all so much. This has been great.